A normal day in Japan.
昨日テレビ面白かったね。
すごい面白かった。
すごい笑ってたじゃない。
そう、あの芸人さん結構好きかも。
本当？はい。おやすみ。
いいよそういうの。もうその年じゃないし。
はい。
もういい。
いいの？よかった。ゆっくり休んでね。
おやすみ。
おやすみ。
Have you ever noticed how the small details in everyday life often shape the deepest connections within a family?
できます。
いってらっしゃい。
It's not always the big events, the grand celebrations, or the milestones that define love. Sometimes it's in the quiet moments, the late dinners, the gentle conversations, the small acts of care that a family discovers its strength. Yu had been married for many years. Her life with her husband was full of happiness, though like many modern couples, they often felt the pull of busy schedules. Her husband, committed to his career, often came home late at night. Yui understood this reality, but there were evenings when she couldn't help noticing a subtle distance forming. It wasn't dramatic or overwhelming, but a quiet space that made her reflect on what truly keeps a family close. In their home, there was also a younger presence, Yui's teenage sister. She had moved in with them a few years ago, and though young, she brought a kind of freshness and liveliness that reminded Yui of her own earlier years. Both Yui and her husband treated her like a daughter, guiding her, caring for her, and often worrying about her choices, as young people sometimes make decisions without thinking through the consequences. The sister represented both responsibility and joy in their household, someone who needed protection, love, and good role models. For Yui, her sister's presence became a mirror. She often thought, if I want my sister to grow up valuing kindness, stability, and honesty, then I must first embody those qualities myself. This thought gave her strength even during the times when she felt her relationship with her husband was being tested by distance and busy days. Then came a turning point, though it didn't arrive in the form of conflict. It wasn't about loud arguments or sharp words, but about realization. One evening, after waiting for her husband to return home from another long day at work, Yui quietly reflected, our life is good, but are we truly nurturing it? Are we spending enough time together as a family? This awareness sparked something inside her. She knew that building a family wasn't just about enduring challenges silently. It was about communication, about speaking with gentleness, and about making space for one another despite all the demands of the outside world. Instead of letting her worries grow in silence, Yui chose another path. She decided to talk to her husband with honesty and warmth. It wasn't an easy conversation to initiate, because even gentle truths require courage. When she finally spoke, her husband listened. At first, he was surprised, but then he understood that her words weren't criticism. They were an invitation to grow closer again.
何やってんだよって。不倫してるよね。会社の人？
そう。 若いの？で、これからどうするの？
もちろん別れる。
本当に別れるの？
本
会社で会うよね？大丈夫？
当大丈
信用できないけど約束してよね。
夫。分かっ
あとひまりには絶対言わないでね。バレないようにして。
た。分かってる。そんな。
明日からちゃんと普通にね。
分かった。
He realized that in his pursuit of success at work, he had unintentionally created distance in his most important relationship. And because the conversation was framed in kindness, it didn't create defensiveness, but instead inspired him to adjust. From that evening onward, their home began to transform, not through sudden dramatic gestures, but through small, intentional actions.
あ、待ってね、学校。
行ってきます。
いってらっしゃい。
いってらっしゃい。
頑張って。いってらっしゃい。
言ってないよな。
いいわけないじゃん。
朝からそんな面すんだよ。
なるでしょ。
行ってきます。
いってらっしゃい。
Shared dinners, laughter after long days, moments of simply being present with one another. Their sister noticed this shift as well. She could feel the warmth returning to the household, and it gave her comfort. For her, seeing Yui and her husband handle challenges with calm and compassion was a living lesson in how to nurture relationships. The introduction of this story is not about perfection. No family is perfect. Instead, it is about the choice to prioritize love over neglect, communication over silence, and presence over absence. Yui's family wasn't without its challenges, but what defined them was their ability to turn challenges into opportunities for growth. And so, the home became not only a place of shelter, but a space where lessons were lived, where a younger sister learned by observing, and where a couple discovered that happiness is less about grand achievements and more about daily commitment to care, respect, and togetherness. That is where our story truly begins, with a family learning that warmth is built intentionally, that bonds are strengthened in quiet acts, and that every relationship, whether between husband and wife or between siblings, requires time, patience, and love. As days turned into weeks, the changes Yui and her husband had promised each other began to take root. At first, they were small and subtle. A message during the day just to ask how things were going. A conscious effort to finish work a little earlier, at least once a week. A decision to have dinner together, not rushed, but unraveled slowly with laughter and conversation. Their younger sister noticed these shifts almost immediately. She might have been young, but she was perceptive. For her, the household now felt different, lighter, warmer, more connected. It made her feel secure in ways she hadn't always understood she needed. Being in her teenage years, she was at an age where confusion often clouded decisions, where emotions could feel overwhelming. Knowing that her sister and brother-in-law were there, not just as guardians, but as examples, gave her an anchor. But as every family knows, transformation doesn't happen in a straight line. Some days were easier than others. There were evenings when exhaustion made conversations shorter, when schedules collided, and when Yui found herself wondering if the balance they had promised was truly sustainable. Yet what made the difference this time was their shared awareness. They no longer saw distance as inevitable. They recognized it as a signal, a reminder to return to their commitment of presence. It was during this period that Yui's sister began facing her own challenges. She had a small circle of friends at school, and sometimes disagreements with them left her feeling isolated. One night, Yui found her sister unusually quiet, staring at her notebook but not writing anything. Instead of pressing her with questions, Yui simply sat beside her. The silence stretched for a few moments before her sister finally whispered, "I feel like I don't belong." These words pierced Yui's heart, not because they were unusual, but because she remembered having the same feelings at that age. Adolescence is filled with moments of doubt, of searching for identity, of wanting to be seen and valued. Yu didn't rush to solve the problem. She didn't dismiss her sister's feelings by saying, "It will pass." Instead, she shared a story from her own youth about a time when she too felt out of place, and how it eventually taught her the importance of finding people who valued her for who she truly was. Her sister listened intently, and in that moment, something shifted. She realized she wasn't alone, that even those she admired had walked through similar struggles. Yui's husband joined them later, and together, they turned the evening into a gentle discussion about friendship, self-worth, and the courage to stay true to oneself.
お待たせ。
久しぶり。
久しぶり。
These family conversations became a pattern. Whenever the younger sister felt unsure, she could turn to them without fear of being judged. And whenever Yui and her husband noticed her withdrawing, they would create space for her to speak. It was a rhythm of openness that built trust, layer by layer. Then came another turning point, one that could have introduced tension, but instead deepened their bond. The younger sister mentioned she had started seeing someone she liked. Her cheeks flushed with both excitement and nervousness as she shared the news. For many families, this could have been a source of worry, but Yui and her husband chose a different approach. They knew that forbidding or dismissing her feelings would only push her into secrecy. Instead, they welcomed the honesty. With warmth, they told her that they were glad she trusted them enough to share. They suggested inviting her friend over. At first, the sister hesitated, unsure of how her boyfriend would be received. But when the day came, Yu and her husband treated him with kindness. They asked about his interests, his dreams, and his family. They didn't overwhelm him with rules. Instead, they modeled respect and sincerity. This moment left a deep impression on the sister. She saw how love could be guided, not controlled. She realized that relationships thrive not in secrecy, but in openness and support. And she felt grateful for having a home where she could learn these lessons safely. For Yui and her husband, These experiences reminded them of their own responsibility. They weren't just shaping their marriage. They were shaping a young life. Every word, every gesture, every choice became part of the foundation her sister would one day stand upon. And with that awareness, they found themselves growing stronger too. Of course, challenges still arose. Sometimes the husband's work required unexpected hours. Sometimes Yui felt tired from balancing her own responsibilities. Sometimes the sister made choices that worried them. But each time, they returned to the same principle. Communicate with kindness, guide with patience, and remember that family is not built in grand declarations, but in everyday choices. The climax of their story wasn't marked by conflict or crisis, but by realization. They discovered that true family strength comes from facing difficulties together, without fear, without blame, and without giving up. It was not about avoiding mistakes, but about responding to them with compassion. And in this process, the house they shared transformed into more than a dwelling. It became a place of growth, resilience, and inspiration, a reminder that the strongest bonds are not those untouched by challenges, but those strengthened by them. Life inside Yui's home shifted from busyness to balance, not perfect, but intentional. Each choice and word built trust and growth, especially for her younger sister, who quietly learned by watching. The greatest lesson was communication. Simple conversations at the dinner table or calm expressions during conflict prevented misunderstandings and created closeness. Yui's patience, her husband's willingness to listen, and their steady presence showed that love grows through consistency, not dramatic gestures. Yui validated her sister's struggles instead of dismissing them, teaching that emotions are signals for care, not weakness. She also showed empathy toward her husband, understanding his long hours as responsibility, not neglect. Through compassion, their home became a safe, judgment-free space. Rather than controlling, Yui and her husband invited conversations, respected her choices, and offered support, building trust and openness. Their home became a classroom where values weren't preached, but lived honesty, kindness, and respect modeled daily. In turn, caring for the sister reminded Yui and her husband to lead with patience and service. Together, they discovered that family strength lies not in perfection, but in intention, communication, compassion, and guidance that endure and inspire. As time passed, the changes within Yui's home no longer felt like adjustments. They became a natural part of daily life. The younger sister thrived in this environment. With her family's guidance, she grew into a confident young woman, able to express her emotions honestly and approach her relationships with maturity. Instead of feeling alone, she knew her family stood beside her. Yui and her husband discovered that family life, like a garden, thrives on daily care, communication, compassion, and trust. Their marriage grew stronger, not because challenges vanished, but because they chose to rebuild harmony with patience and love. These lessons extended to Yui's sister, who applied them in her friendships, proving that kindness at home shapes the wider world. True strength, they learned, is not control but partnership. Their story reminds us that relationships flourish through small, consistent acts of care, and that every choice we make becomes a lesson for those watching, teaching love, resilience, and empathy beyond the home. Yui's story reminds us that family life is shaped by daily choices. The warmth of tomorrow grows from the seeds we plant today through communication, empathy, and love. Even small acts, like a kind word, a shared meal, or listening, can strengthen bonds and inspire generations. Family is both presence and guidance, and from these simple beginnings, a life of connection, growth, and lasting inspiration can unfold. That is the true gift of family.